Hey guys, Jack here from Virtue, and we have the VIVE FOCUS. Yeah! We managed to import this from China, and here's our full review, and hopefully answering some of the questions that you have asked.
The first point we want to cover with the VIVE FOCUS is the display quality, as it makes really good grounds here compared to the HTC VIVE. Its main improvement is the higher resolution display, and there's around 80% more pixels, which means text is much more visible, you can read it easier, and generally everything is much more sharper as they've improved the optics.
It's key to point out though that this is an evolution of the VIVE. It's not a brand new experience. You're not going to put it on and suddenly think it's 10 times better than anything that you've tried before. What it is a look at though is where the technology's going. And generally it's a much more cleaner experience. It's either easier to use, easier to put on, and it's just much quicker to set up. One of the issues that we've noticed more with this is Eyestrain, as we seem to get it a lot more with the VIVE FOCUS compared to the HTC VIVE, for example.
Now, whether this is to do with the refresh rate, which is 75Hz instead of 90Hz compared to the HTC VIVE, or it may be the brightness, we're not quite sure yet. We're going to keep an eye on it as we use it more, but it's certainly something to keep in mind. It isn't with every app, there are some that are better than others, but it's certainly not perfect.
Now next up is the audio, and first of all how this works is that the speakers are in the headset itself and the sound is directed towards your ears. And this actually works surprisingly well. Providing you don't need the best audio quality and there's not much external noise going around, it actually allows you to have a really good experience straight out of the box. You can just put it on and go for it. If you want to improve that though, you can simply put some headphones on, as the speakers are comparable to smartphone, I would say, in that the noise is fairly tinny and there's not much bass. The only thing to consider is that because of where the headband is and where it sits on your head, you might struggle to get some larger headphones to sit comfortably, so you just need to test that out really.
Next up is what we thought of the comfort and weight of the Focus, as this is one of the major gripes of the HTC VIVE, in that its weight and its distribution of that weight, especially over time, affects comfort. Now HTC have put in a lot of effort to remedy this with the Focus, and we think they've succeeded. It's certainly more lightweight than the HTC VIVE, and considering it's got an integrated battery and a smartphone chipset, that's pretty impressive. The headband is similar to the deluxe audio strap that you can get with the HTC VIVE, in that there's a dial on the back of your head that you twist to tighten it and get a better fit. Now the back strap also sits a bit lower than the deluxe audio strap, which helps get a much better fit on the back of your head and keeps it on there much more securely, so 5 out of 5 for improving that. Now that we've covered all of those topics, we can move on to one of the key features that we were interested in covering, which is the tracking. Now the tracking on the Focus is inside out, meaning there are no external sensors to track your location. It's simply all done by the two cameras on the front of the headset. We really wanted to put it through its paces, so one of the first things we did was take it around Bristol. Now as default, the tracking is set to a 2x2 metre play area, but we disabled this pretty quickly and it's easily done in the settings. This effectively gives you an unlimited play area, which is awesome. Now we only really tested this from the home screen, but it simply let us walk forever. We didn't come to any limits and we went pretty damn far. We did test it in a couple of apps. They did bug out, but they didn't close. You know, we ended up going under some levels, but it did just let us wander around for as much as we wanted. Considering that the most we've ever explored is 5 meters max, being able to walk hundreds of meters in virtual reality is amazing. I don't know if there'll be many apps that will be able to take advantage of this, but it will certainly be interesting to see what people can do when they get their hands on it. Now the first test that we wanted to do is to see how the headset coped moving at different speeds, i.e. walking, jogging or running. And overall, it was absolutely fine. There was no positional tracking lost regardless of what speed we were moving at.
Yeah, so I'm back to where I started now. Like, when I just did that run, I'm in exactly the same position. So I'm like halfway through the platform still.
Okay.
I did get a brief positional tracking warning at the end of the run. I don't know what caused it, like it literally just flickered in and out instantly.
It is fairly easy to reset and calibrate though, as you simply have to take it off, wait for it to go into standby, which takes a few seconds, put it back on, and it reorientates you. So that's the one thing that seems to mess it up a bit when running, is that for some reason your height orientation changes.
Yeah.
Whether it's the movement up and down, I don't know.
Might be the change in elevation one way looks different to the change in elevation the other
Possibly,
way.
yeah. I can see this being more of an issue in applications that you're actively using, but unless you've got a massive space to move in, or you're moving at very high speeds, I don't see this being an issue, especially where the content to enable you to do that isn't there yet. The next test was to see how accurate it can keep tracking over a long distance. So we've planned 4 routes around Bristol, all coming back to the same point, and we're going to see how it copes, and if it actually takes me back to the same point in this. So we'll see. And this was for 2 reasons. 1, how well it could consistently track its own location in the virtual world, and 2, how did the tracking hold up in different environments, such as reflective glass windows from buildings, lots of people being around you, or simply walking through a shopping centre. For part 1, it did really well. It never got us back to the same exact location, but it was always within a few metres, and considering some routes were over 1 kilometre, we were pretty impressed with that. For part 2, we had almost no tracking problems. We had one shaky moment standing next to a glass building where we floated off for a bit, but other than that, it was absolutely fine. We walked through a busy food market with lots of people around, no issues. We went from outside, inside to a shopping centre, out the other side, and walked back to the starting location, and yeah, the tracking coped with it fine. It's worth pointing out that the controller does tend to veer off to the right after prolonged use, but simply holding down a button for 2 to 3 seconds recalibrates it and it's pointing forward again. Now the next big question is the content, and it's pretty scarce. There's currently less than 40 applications available. Whether this is partly caused by us trying to use outside China, but we expect it simply because there just isn't much content there at all. It's not that surprising though, considering it seems to be a recurring problem in VR. And as most people will know, if you're into VR, it's partly because the lack of hardware. Developers don't want to create content for hardware that isn't there, and companies don't want to make the hardware if there's no content for it. Obviously HTC have released it now. Hopefully it'll do well in China, it will get released worldwide, which means a lot more developers will get their hand on it, and hopefully we'll start seeing a lot more content being made for it. Fingers crossed. Onto the actual content that is available. Some of the games there are fun, but there's nothing that we would currently want to sink hours into. What we've really been enjoying are the 360 video players, and specifically there's an app on there called Visbit 8K Player, which streams 8K 360 footage, and it was pretty damn epic. Some of the scenes they've got in there really look amazing, and I think that's where this sort of headset really shines. Because it is so easy to use, I think you can share that experience very easily with people around you. Other than that though, there's really not a great deal more to say on the content, only that we want to see more soon. The battery life is as it says on the box. It lasts for about 3 hours with normal use, and it'll take around half that to fully charge it back up again. I think that's pretty reasonable for this sort of headset. There's not much on there at the moment that I would want to spend more than 3 hours on, apart from watching a really long film.